Honeybees are in some serious trouble, and the people trying to save them, they're locked in this really passionate, often heated debate. Everyone agrees on the goal. We need healthy bees. But when it comes to how to get there, well, that's where things get complicated. So it all boils down to this one simple sounding question. What is the absolute best way to keep bees alive? But behind that question are these deeply held beliefs about nature, science, and our place in all of it. And the answers, well, they are anything but simple. And here's the thing. Beekeeping isn't just one single practice. It's more like a collection of different philosophies, almost like tribes. And each tribe is totally convinced that their way is the right way, the only way to care for bees.
Okay, so let's get into it. Basically, you've got three main camps. First, there are the conventional beekeepers. They use any registered tool they can get their hands on. Then you have the organic keepers, who stick to a more restricted list of natural treatments. And finally, you've got the chemical-free group, who believe you shouldn't use any treatments at all. And what's wild is they all think they're doing what's best. This is where science finally steps into the ring. Dr. Robin Underwood, a researcher at Penn State, was hearing all these passionate stories and anecdotes, but they were all conflicting. So she decided to find a real, data-driven answer. Her mission? To move past opinions and see what actually works. So before we jump into the experiment itself, we really need to get crystal clear on what these different philosophies actually mean day to day. Because trust me, the details here really matter.
All right, let's break this down. Conventional means any registered tool is fair game, and that includes synthetic chemicals like Amitraz. Now, organic, and this is super important, is not the same as chemical-free. It means using naturally derived treatments, things like formic or oxalic acid. And then you have chemical-free or treatment-free, which is exactly what it sounds like. You put absolutely nothing in the hive to treat for pests. That distinction is key.
Okay, so with those philosophies clearly defined, the stage was set. Dr. Underwood and her team were ready to design this massive, real-world experiment to put them all to the test, head-to-head.
And we're not talking about some small-scale lab test here. No way. This was the CALM project, a huge 3-year-long study that involved nearly 300 honeybee colonies, all managed under real-world conditions. That scale is exactly what makes the results so incredibly powerful. Now, what makes this experiment so legit is that it wasn't just designed by scientists in some ivory tower. They actually brought in 30 experienced beekeepers, people from all three philosophies, to help design how the study would work. This made sure the experiment reflected what people are actually doing out in the field. The differences went right down to the nitty-gritty, even the equipment. The conventional and organic groups use standard beehive comb, but the chemical-free group used something called small cell foundation. The idea was to mimic the smaller cell size that bees build in the wild, hoping it might help them resist mites all on their own. And right here, this is the heart of the entire experiment, the treatment plans. The conventional group used synthetic miticides. The organic group used things like formic acid, oxalic acid, and thymol. And the chemical-free group? They got nothing, not a single mite treatment. They were completely on their own. So for 3 years, the team collected data on, well, everything. Mite levels, viruses, how much honey was produced, and the ultimate measure, survival. And when they finally crunched all those numbers, the results weren't just a little clear, they were unmistakable. First up, let's talk about the Varroa mite, the honeybee's public enemy number one. In the fall, when mite populations just explode, the levels in the conventional and organic colonies were kept nice and low. But the chemical-free colonies, oh man, their mite loads were through the roof, way, way above the level where colony can survive. And right here, we see the direct result of that. See, Varroa mites are like little dirty needles, spreading deadly viruses, especially deformed wing virus. And look at this. The virus levels almost perfectly mirror the mite levels. Low mites meant low virus. High mites? That meant a full-blown virus catastrophe in those untreated hives. It just makes sense, right? A sick colony is not a productive colony. And the data showed it plain as day. The chemical-free bees who were struggling so hard against mites and viruses made way less honey than their treated neighbors in the conventional and organic groups. So, if there's one number you remember from this, let it be this one. After 3 years of study, out of the 96 colonies that started in the chemical-free group, only one was left, a single colony. It was a near total wipeout. And this chart, well, it tells the final, brutal story.
While the conventional and organic groups were doing great with high survival rates, the chemical-free group just collapsed. The losses year after year were devastating. It showed with painful clarity that the hands-off approach just didn't work.
Okay, so after looking at this heartbreaking but really scientifically necessary experiment, what are the big takeaways? What does all this data actually tell us about how to keep bees?
The conclusions are just so incredibly clear. First, controlling for varroa mites isn't optional. It's absolutely non-negotiable if you want your bees to survive. Second, we can now see that deadly chain of events. High mites leads to high viruses, which leads to colony death. And maybe the most hopeful finding of all? The organic treatments worked just as well as the synthetic ones.
So this research doesn't just end a debate. It actually gives us a clear, evidence-based path forward for any beekeeper who really wants healthy, thriving bees.
Dr. Underwood's final message is a really powerful one. She says if you're going to keep bees, you have a responsibility to manage their health. Believing they can just handle these modern pests all on their own is, according to this data, a fatal mistake. And this, for me, is the most empowering takeaway from the entire study. It shows that beekeepers are not stuck with some harsh synthetic chemicals on one hand and just letting their bees die on the other. This research proved that there is a third way, an organic management path that is just as effective at keeping bees healthy and alive. So we're left with this fascinating final question. When the scientific data is this clear, this unambiguous, why does the romantic idea of a natural, treatment-free beehive, one that just perfectly fits our ideals of how nature should work, why does that idea still have such a powerful hold on so many people?